Yeah, creepy friend.
I know.
Matt, that's a clip from Thoroughbreds, and I chose that clip specifically because, of course, it features Anton Yelchin. Anton Yelchin, which we lost about, it hasn't been 2 years, but it's been about a year at least, right?
At least, yeah.
That tragic accident. I mean, read up it's a horrible, horrible way to go. And an absolute loss. And just seeing him again in this film, Matt, really just drove home just what an absolute talent that guy was and just a loss to the industry he was. So I wanted to give him a little praise. And as I said before, he plays the drug dealer with the heart of gold who's just waiting for his chance to kind of put things together and take that next step, right, into drug dealer superstardom, if there is such a thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
but he's got a man with a plan. So good for him. So we have two young women. And I love that the film is set in Connecticut, which always, I used to do this thing when I would watch Law and Order episodes, man. Every time there'd be a Connecticut reference, I'd go, yeah, Connecticut. So we have two young women on the upper end of the social class scale. And one of them, and they were friends, Matt, a long time ago as kids. They kind of grew apart because one of them, Miss Olivia Cook's character, who Amanda has a bit of an issue, and she has no empathy. She is what do you call it? Not quite a psychopath, but she's got, she kind of talks about what she's got going on.
She's a sociopath. There
you go. Thank you. And Anya Taylor-Joy plays Lily, her friend who's trying to connect with her and who really, really hates her stepfather. So the two of them team up and try and figure out ways. Maybe we're going to take them out. So Matt, I'm a big fan of Anya Taylor-Joy. We first saw her in The Witch, I believe, right? That was my first exposure to Miss Taylor-Joy. And I've been impressed with her, Olivia Cook as well. So what do you think about Thoroughbreds? Is it a little, I feel like it is a little too indie, is a little too highbrow, a little too highfalutin for the story it's trying to tell, or is that really just integral to the story? What were your thoughts on Thoroughbreds? Is it a little indie darling, or is it kind of an eye roll? Yeah, I get it. A little indie thriller thing. I've seen this before.
I'm pretty critical. I've been pretty critical of indie movies. I don't know if it's just as I get older, I get less forgiving of them than I was in my 20s. But I thought it was fine. I didn't look at it and say, this is all the indie tricks. I don't think there's anything groundbreaking here. I think it's a kind of a, like you said, a film noir. I hesitate. I wouldn't really call either one of them femme fatales, but kind of like a Bound / Heavenly Creatures kind of thing going on here. But it's good. And you know what I really appreciated about this, and I think what really kind of makes it a decent film is that it's tight. It's a very lean 90 minutes. They kind of get in, they tell you what you need to know, not a lot of backstory or meandering or anything like that, which I think is perfect for this type of stuff. It just it relies on you to pick up the kind of what you need to know just in kind of little snippets, and I think it just focuses on the kind of here and now of the two characters, which I think works for this kind of film.
Yeah, I agree. I think the relationship between Lily and Amanda is really interesting. Because this is what happens sometimes, right? Maybe not always to this degree. But there are people and personalities who can absolutely bring out the worst in each other. And that's what this thing's about. And I think director and writer Corey, Finley, I think he does a really good job of, subverting our expectations on this. I think he does a good job of stringing us along. The film kind of gets darker and creepier as it progresses. But for me, man, I got to tell you, when the hammer falls on this thing, it was like a brick through a plate glass window. I was just the way he orchestrates the final resolution of what's going to happen, for me, really hit me like a punch in the gut, which I think is to Finley's credit for sure. I don't know. It's interesting because I was talking to my wife about not this film, but just generally just stuff going on right now in the country. And she has this kind of working theory that we all have a little bit of this darkness in it, and that there are people who just represent who we all could be given the right circumstances. And especially, I think, when people are immune to consequence, emotion, and even empathy, that perhaps they could likely do anything. I guess there's a documentary on Netflix right now called Push, which I think we may want to check out as well, which maybe covers this a little bit. But really, I think the film explores kind of all those themes, the really clever, dark wit. And I found because it was really funny at times as well, obviously darkly comic, but still quite amusing. But the whole thing really hooks and is stood up by the performances of Taylor-Joy and Cook. I don't think this thing would have been half as interesting if these two ladies didn't deliver some really interesting and kind of fascinating portraits of these just women who just have a life of no consequence and they can do what they want. And I don't know. I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. I really, really enjoyed this thing, and I think it was because of the strength of those two performances, and of course Yelchin, who really brings a depth, I think, to his drug dealer character Tim. I don't know. I really, really like this thing. I thought it's some really interesting framing shots. It felt very, like you said, it is very film noir-esque. It's got a little bit Hitchcock in it as well. I like how he frames the women throughout the film. I don't know. If I had any issues with it, I don't know if there's any real heft to this thing, but it's still, I think it's a fine modern film noir where I'll say it that I think both ladies really are the femme fatale. And as I said, because they play off and they feed each other's neuroses and the worst things about each other. I don't know. I really enjoyed this thing.
Yeah, I think to its credit, I mean, it does, even though it is a film noir, and even it's got its, its basis in that type of genre film, it zigs where you expect it to zag a little bit, which I appreciated, especially with, Yelchin's character. And just by the sheer fact that, even though the camera and the focus of the story is on these two women or these young women, I like how they kind of subvert it. You're going along with it, and then it kind of brings in just a flash of other people's perspective, and it's like, wait a minute, these people are really not that good of people, or they're not justified in any way, shape, or form with what they're doing, or even what the injustices that they're perceiving and they're kind of building all this stuff off of. It doesn't justify their actions at all. It's not like one of these things where like something horrible is happening, so they're taking revenge. It's really, they're just kind of, like you said, they're feeding into their own darker, baser desires and kind of justifying their actions to each other in kind of this echo chamber, which I thought was a really interesting way to do it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think really interesting use too of sound in this film too, particularly the workout device that the stepfather uses, which I think is the same one Kevin Spacey uses in the House of Cards. Okay, that's how I pictured it. So if you're wondering what, because you never actually see it, because it's more used for audible impact, and then the score itself, it's very original and different. It's one of the more original scores I've heard since I think Nathan Johnson, I think it is Ryan Johnson's brother, when he did the score for Brick, which is one of my favorites because he actually did it, a lot of the score with like kitchen utensils and jars and things. It's really kind of, there's a unique quality to the score that I really appreciate. So I know for those film score fans out there, it's almost worth checking out, I think, for that. I really enjoyed it that much. So I agree. Maybe it's not brand new kind of spin on this genre, but I still think it was really well done. And as I said earlier, it does kind of subvert your expectations as it plays out. So I don't know. I think I'm coming down with this one on a B+. What about you?
I gave it a B, a little bit less, but I still thought it was a good solid entry.
Yeah, there you go. Thoroughbreds, playing everywhere right now, though I think it may be shrinking in screenings. So if you get a chance to check it out, I would definitely urge you to go see this. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Matt, coming up on Blu-ray and DVD this upcoming Tuesday, that is March 20th. Gonna go a little Jumanji. I didn't get to see it. Now, Jumanji, it's about what, two brothers who open up an Italian restaurant, and no, I like it when Giada, she says spaghetti, that kind of thing. There's a Jumanji. That's when you're supposed to eat, right? That's what your grandmother always said. Jumanji.
Sure, you tell me. You're the Italian of the two of us.
Barely. I'm barely Italian. I think I'm more Italian in my name. So Jumanji is the one with The Rock and Jack Black and Kevin Hart and, oh, good God, I'm forgetting her name. Karen
Gillian.
Gillian. Thank you. I was going to say Gilliam, but I knew that was wrong. Speaking of which, hey, Terry Gilliam, shove it up your butt. All right. What else? It includes a gag reel and 5 featurettes. Alexander Payne's latest film, Downsizing, with Matt Damon, when he gets shrunk down real good. That's getting released as well. Blu-ray, DVD, digital copy, ultraviolet pass. So there are a whole bunch of featurettes in the making of that one. Look out, Pitches. There's kind of joke in there. Pitch Perfect 3 is being released, includes some special features specific to the Blu-ray. But Matt, the only way you're going to get the deleted scenes and the gag reel, as well as 2 musical performances, is by buying the 4K. So if you want all the goodies, folks, for the Pitch Perfect 3, you're going to have to get the 4K, which I think is kind of, that's not cool.
It's messed up. That's not cool, Pitches.
Listen, the people I think who have embraced 4K are just ridiculously rich people. And then people, snobs like me, who want kind of the best kind of picture quality, your Blade Runners, 2049s, you're going to want that in 4K. I don't know if Pitch Perfect 3 is a 4K must-own.
Right.
I'm not at a point, Matt, where I'm buying blanket 4Ks. I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it hasn't become... I mean, when they start coming down in price, I mean, it's just going to be like Blu-ray. I mean, you can get Blu-rays now for relatively cheap.
True. So, but no. Anyway, that's the only way to get all the good stuff. Criterion is giving us The Passion of Joan of Arc and an all-new high-definition digital restoration. Includes an alternate presentation of the film at 20 frames per second with the original Danish intertitles. Includes 3 scores, audio commentary from 1999 by film scholar Kasper Teibjerg, a new interview with a whole bunch of other people, some new conversations, so you can pick that up. Criterion is also giving us Ball. Volker Schundorf transported to Bertolt Brecht's 1918 debut play to contemporary West Germany. This vicious experiment and adaptation, seldom seen for nearly half a century. So you can check that out with a new restored 2K digital transfer, as well as a bunch of interviews and some new conversations and interviews as well. Matt, have you ever seen Ichi the Killer, Takashi Miike's film?
No, I haven't. It was on Netflix for a really long time, and it's one of those films that I put in my queue and it just languished there until it disappeared.
Well, I think you should see it if you're a Miike fan. I'll get that out. There's an all-new 4K restoration of the film. This is supposed to be the best version available on home video up to this point. So you can finally pick that one up. Includes an audio commentary with Miike, as well as manga artist, writer Hideo Yamamoto. Shout Factory is giving us The Burbs with an all-new 2K remaster struck from the original Interpositive. Includes new interviews with director Joe Dante, as well as the editor and director of photography. An alternate ending and some other stuff. The Burbs. I keep going back and forth on The Burbs, Matt. I remember enjoying it when it came out. But I'm like, do I really need to own The Burbs and see it? I don't know. I can't decide.
See, I watched that film when I was very young. I think it was kind of above my head, and I remember being horribly, horribly disappointed by it, and I've never really revisited it, so I can't even tell you if it was any good or not.
Fair enough. The Church is being released, the Italian horror film by Michel Sauvé, sometimes known as Demons 3. Includes a new interview with Sauvé, as well as an interview with the C. Argento. I like The Church. I thought it was pretty good. If you're a fan of Italian horror, it may be worth picking up. I still have it on DVD. I don't know if I would upgrade to the Blu-ray for that. There's something about the Italian horror stuff that I kind of appreciate the DVD for the most part, because it's not like the quality was that good to begin with. Right. It kind of maintains that grindhouse feel when you don't have a really good picture quality. But I did get that 4K Suspiria, and let me tell you, that thing is looking sweet. Shout Factory is also giving us Rockula. Ralph, played by Dean Cameron, is from summer school and I believe Ski Patrol. He's just your typical average vampire with love in his heart, music in his veins, and a curse on his head. Every 22 years, poor Ralph is doomed to lose his soulmate, Mona, at the hands of a rhinestone peg-legged pirate brandishing a large ham bone. Just go with us on this, which is actually what it reads. But this time around, with the help of his newly formed band, Rockula, Ralph is determined to crush the curse once and for all, and show Mona that when you're a vampire, true love is eternal, and rock and roll never dies. Devil Horns. Includes a brand new master of that, a new audio commentary as well, and new interviews with director and actor Dean Cameron. So that's coming from Shout. And then, Matt, your straight to DVD pick of the week is Attack of the Southern Fried Zombies. Lonnie, a crop duster pilot, must lead a mismatched group of survivors to escape the deadly zombie horde after an experimental chemical intended to control the invasive kudzu vine transforms the citizens of Charleston, Mississippi into zombies. That is. I lost the thread. Redneck zombies. No, Southern Fried Zombies. One of those. Attack of the Southern Fried Zombies. Damn it, Jimmy, with the notes. Matt, what should we be streaming this week?
All right, so this is a film, I think we brought it up when we were talking about our first run canon. At least it was in the running at one point. It's 50-50. Stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Seth Rogen. It's about a young man who's in his late 20s who's diagnosed with cancer, and he's given a 50-50 shot to live. And basically, it's kind of like a dramedy. Would we say it's a dramedy?
Sure.
Or, it's basically JGL's character, going through the process of chemotherapy and kind of, who stands by him. And it's a really good, solid movie. It's something you should check out. It is available on Amazon Prime.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's pretty good. And it is funny, too. So, yeah, check that out. All right, Matt. Moving on up. Maybe.
Are we moving up? Are we moving up? Really?
Let's take a break and let's hear a little something from Duncan Jones's latest film, Mute.
Do you know what it is to make your dreams come true, Leo? I've seen you working downstairs. You're a good man. As a barman, should not punch the customers.
I don't deserve you, Leo. I love you so much, but you don't know me.
I want to know what the deal is with this crazy bartender.
Sure you want our help with this?
This kind of thing hurts my reputation.
Daddy's gotta go.
Oh,
No soda.
Your girlfriend has secrets.
I'm very talkative.
Something's going on. You need to maintain a sense of humor, babe. You gonna give me some trouble, big boy? Or are you gonna channel that famous Amish serenity?
All right, babe. Why don't you tell the folks at home what is Mute all about?
Oh God, what are you always going to stick me with the weird ones? So Mute is about a bartender, this Alexander Skarsgård, who is Amish in this kind of, are we in near future or far future? Near middle-ish future Germany. He's a bartender in I don't know, some kind of weird future techno strip club thing, and he basically has a thing for one of the serving girls or the waitresses, and she disappears, and he goes off looking for her. And at the same time, there's a concurrent story starring Paul Rudd as a military deserter from the U.S. military who's also doing underground surgeries for the mob and criminals, and the two kind of paths kind of cross as they go through the story.
So yeah, it's 2035. So I don't know how you want to gauge that time-wise. So
I'd say near future then.
We're
not going to have flying cars. Were there flying cars? There weren't flying cars, but there were suspiciously looking flying vehicles in those wide shots.
There certainly were.
Yes.
So I got to tell you one thing. Clearly, Duncan Jones has an affinity and respect for Blade Runner. I think we all do. And I think part of me thinks that this film takes place in the same universe without actually saying it. One thing it does definitely do, Matt, is take place in the same universe as Moon. And it's probably, and unfortunately, my favorite thing about this is that we find out what happened to our friend Sam Bell from Moon, played by recent Academy Award winner Sam. What's Sam's name?
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell. Why was I blanking on Rockwell, my man?
Serious.
That's just pathetic. So the spiritual sequel to Moon takes place in the same universe as I'm sure it does with Blade Runner. Matt, am I wrong about this, or is this thing an absolutely just a complete misfire?
It is a complete misfire. It is boring. I mean, really, I just could not get into this thing. It was just a slog, and it was so long, and I hate it when we watch movies like this. Like, I want this to be good, but it's like you just got to tough through it for the good of the show. and our 6 listeners and the fine people of Gasparilla who are listening to this right now, I was so disappointed because we really like Moon. I mean, Moon is fantastic. I just don't even understand.
And back on Netflix right now, actually.
Is it? I just don't understand how this went off the rails so hard. I mean, it's got a good cast. We obviously know Duncan Jones is capable. I don't get it, but it is just not good. It's just not good.
I feel like I know what he was trying to do, but it just never comes together. I tell you, Matt, for the first 60 minutes, I felt like I was in the Mystery Science Theater yelling out, "What is happening?" There's like 3 separate movies going on in this thing. And the problem is, I get that he set up a mystery and that these folks are all going to, I guess, eventually tie in together. But even when the reveal comes, it feels disjointed. Everything feels kind of just haphazardly glued together, right? Mm-hmm. And it's weird too because it goes to some really dark places. I don't know if we really needed the child predator angle. I don't understand what that really accomplishes, and even then the big conclusion on the bridge doesn't. Just nothing, everything he sets up, nothing pays off. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's too concerned with the visuals and the loving homages to Blade Runner. And though it was cool to look at, that stuff is just not enough. It's not. And one of the other good things that I did enjoy out of this was I got to hear Crystal Japan, which is a instrumental that Bowie did for what was it, a wine? I can't remember. It was a beverage in Japan. So he wrote a jingle for it. And it ended up being a B-side to something on Scary Monsters. But it's it's when he's in the Asian restaurant. It's the song in the background. Of course, I spotted it immediately. But I've always loved Crystal Japan. So, I was like, oh, that's Crystal Japan. And that, unfortunately for me, that was one of the only highlights for me this entire thing, which is just sad. It's a mess. There's no emotional payoff. Skarsgård is almost invisible in this thing, and it's not because his mutes. I just think it's just not good. It's not.
There's really not a whole lot less to say. I mean, it's just boring, which is a cardinal sin.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. I feel like I gave this thing a C-. I feel like I'm being generous.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I enjoyed Moon so much. Maybe it's because of his dad. I don't know.
It's probably the latter. A little bit of the former, a lot of the latter.
I just feel like there's a lot of interesting ideas and threads that just never come together. And he just doesn't pull it together. And it's just very disappointing. I was looking forward to this too. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, and the other thing I don't get, I mean, even just by the fact that it's a nonsensical story, there's no reason this thing had to be a sci-fi film. There's absolutely it has nothing to do with anything. And I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand what he was trying to go for. It really bothers me. I really was kind of had high hopes for this, and it's just really bothering me that I just watched a D film. D, Chris.
D. Yeah. All right, I got it. I would, because you know what, Paul Rudd too is a bad guy. Of always something I'd be interested in, babe. Yeah. You know what I'm saying, babe? You got a sense of humor, babe. So
that was Justin Theroux who kept saying babe, though.
I know. Oh, God. I just horrible decisions left and right.
Although there were some pretty cool bowling balls in that bowling alley. The one that looked like a die or a dice was
yeah. Yep.
That was nice.
Yeah, that was So like I said, there were some really interesting visuals, but it's not enough to make an interesting film.
Yeah.
All right. Mute. Shoot us an email. feedback@thefirstrun.com. Tell us your thoughts. Maybe we're wrong. Did I miss something? I'd love to hear it. Hit us up. Let us know. Matt, coming up next, it's going to be our 5 favorite murderous team-ups. I'm going to play a clip, unfortunately, one that just didn't make the cut because, unfortunately, one of the guys, he just doesn't follow through.
No. Let's say that you'd like to get rid of your wife.
It's a morbid thought.
No. Just suppose. Let's say that you had a very good reason.
No, let's
No,
not.
let's say. Now, you'd be afraid to kill her. You know why? You'd get caught. And what would trip you up? The motive. Now, here's my idea.
I'm afraid I haven't got time to listen, Bruce.
Listen, it's so simple, too. Two fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all. Never saw each other before. Each one has somebody that he'd like to get rid of. So, they swap murders.
Swap murders.
Each fellow does the other fellow's murder. Then there's nothing to connect them. Each one has murdered a total stranger. Like, you do my murder, I do yours.
All right, so man, that was Robert Walker as Bruno Anthony, and of course Farley Granger as Guy Haynes from the Hitchcock classic Strangers on a Train. I would love to have included this. It would have been in my top 5, but you know, Guy doesn't do it. He unfortunately meets up with psychopath Anthony, and he, you know, fortunately, does not go in on his end of the bargain that he never actually makes. So, Matt, did you set up any ground rules for yourself for this? Part of me, I initially wanted to have it just be 2 people, but then I like, it kind of got away from me a little bit. So did you have any? I know you don't usually put yourself in the restrictions on yourself that I do.
Yeah, I don't sit here and overthink it like you do usually. Sometimes I do, but it's pretty rare. Yeah, I just went with straight up couples. I went with pairs, whether they were romantic or if they were just kind of caught up by circumstance, or even just friends or whatever. But yeah, serious couples together, a pair of people.
There you go. All right, so why don't you start things off then for us? What do you got? What's numero cinque?
All right, so then when you brought this up, when you suggested this idea, this was the first one I thought of. And I don't even particularly like this movie, but it's the first thing that came to my mind, so I had to throw it in there. So my number 5 is Mickey and Mallory from Natural Born Killers. Oliver Stone film from, what was this, the late 90s or mid 90s?
Something like that.
Yeah, I remember watching this as a young teenager, and it was really one of the films that it just felt gross after watching it. Like I felt like I had seen something I shouldn't have really seen. And it was really just affecting, and I don't really know if Oliver Stone, I can see what he was trying to get at. I don't know if he was necessarily successful in his, when he said, I think he claimed it's satire, but I don't think that's necessarily true, but it's definitely kind of the far end of the spectrum of the kind of psychopathic kill crazy couple that has been put to celluloid. It's a disturbing film, but I had to put it on this list just because that's immediately what I thought of.
Yeah, I thought about that, but no, I hate that movie.
Yeah.
Hate it. I felt the same way after I watched it. And part of me is like, well, I've never seen the unrated version. Maybe I should give it a shot, but I feel like I would maybe go even further down the hill and not wanting to watch this thing. I don't know. Yeah, it's in my honorable mentions, but I can't do it. So my number 5 is Murder on the Orient Express, but the original one, not the new version. I think it's unfortunately for me, I hadn't seen it ever, and so I watched it when we did the new version earlier or late last year. Earlier this year, I can't remember at this point.
It was last year.
Time is a blur.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, though, I knew what happened generally going into it. But I still enjoyed the film and the mystery of it all and the reveal how everything happens. And not to get too much into it, so if you haven't seen it, so I won't spoil it for you. But it is quite the team up that accomplishes this murder. And it was just fun to watch. Plus, you got Sean Connery and, you know, I don't know. I just felt it earned its due and it needed to be on my list. And it makes me want to check out more Poirot films, which, of course, I have yet to do. But still. The original Murder on the Orient Express.
All right, so my number 4 is a film. I don't think you like this film as much as I do, but I have a soft spot for it. It's Parker and Longbaugh from The Way of the Gun. This is kind of like a pseudo retelling of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where Benicio del Toro and Ryan Philippe play a pair of hired guns who kidnap I think it's Juliette Lewis, I believe, in the film. They kidnap a pregnant woman, and they basically James Caan sends his thugs to come and get her back. And it's a pretty good chase film, really ultra violent, kind of obviously very influenced by Tarantino. I think that's really was part of that kind of movement in the late 90s to kind of snap up anything that could be like this, to kind of hit with the Zeitgeist. But it's a pretty competent film, and I enjoy it. I have a soft spot for it. And I don't know how you feel about this, but honestly, that scene in the beginning with Sarah Silverman outside the bar is something that's been burned into my brain for many years.
I don't think I've ever actually seen that. I think I came close to seeing it once, and I didn't.
Okay.
I think former co-host Esposito too. He was a fan of that one.
Yeah.
But I have yet to check it out. So
it's really a film of its time. So if you can really kind of get back into that Tarantino Zeitgeist, you'll enjoy it. I mean, it's fun. I like it.
All right. My number 4 is a very similar film. It's The Virgin Spring. No, it's not similar at all. Matt, have you seen The Virgin Spring?
I have not.
Are you familiar with Last House on the Left?
Yes. Oh, yes. So this is the film that's based off of. It takes place in like medieval times or something like that.
Yeah. So it's medieval Sweden. It's Ingmar Bergman's film, and I think what the young woman runs afoul of some herdsmen who murder and rape her. I think, but not in that order. And then they seek shelter from the storm at the young lady's. Karen, her name is, played by Brigitte Peterson. They seek shelter at his house, and then they figure out who these herdsmen are. And of course, Max von Sydow is the father, Ture, and he proceeds to kill the herdsman. But it's a really fascinating film because it's not so much really a revenge film as it's Bergman's kind of meditation on the themes of basically paganism and Christianity just crashing head on to each other, and what the questioning of religious faith and sex and all this stuff. It's Bergman. All right. So it's a brilliant film. And it's just, I feel like I almost weaseled it in here because it's not so much about the herdsmen as it is about the themes and the times and everything that is a story of Bergman's telling. But it's a film that has stuck with me. It's a beautiful film as well. If you haven't seen The Virgin Spring, I can't recommend it enough. And then you can watch, Last House on the Left, and you can see all the parallels. And so I don't know, but yeah. So I had to fit that in here. So that's my number 4. It's The Herdsman from The Virgin Spring.
All right. Okay. So number 3 is Heavenly Creatures. I think one of Peter Jackson's earliest films. Starts a very young Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky as 2 teenagers in New Zealand who become best friends, inseparable, and maybe even more. And their parents don't think this relationship is very healthy, so they plot to separate the 2 of them, which they are just not having any of. And of course, they plot their bloody revenge to keep from being separated, based on a true story of an event that really happened in New Zealand in the 50s. But it's a good kind of like the foundation for a lot of these kind of the dangers of teenage girls,
right?
What lurks in the hearts of teenage girls that may terrify you, kind of things. So it's probably the best of that very, very specific subgenre.
And it'd be a good team up with Thoroughbreds.
It would, yes.
I also thought about watching Diabolique as well, because that's actually, if I ever get around to it and do my Great Unwatched project, I have that Criterion release of Diabolique, and I was going to try and watch it in correspondence with Thoroughbreds, but I didn't get to. Dang it. All right, Matt. So my number 3 then is Michael Haneke's Funny Games. More the original 1997 Austrian film, not so much the 2007 American remake. But Paul and Peter, who basically just torture a young couple. And what's interesting too, though, is it's how they do it. They set up these little games to play with the couple, and then they'll break the fourth wall. And it's just I think it's a fascinating little film in a way, in its humor and its cruelty. If you haven't seen a Haneke film, I think Funny Games is a fantastic example of what you're going to get if you decide to get deeper into his oeuvre, if you will. I think the 2007 remake is still really good, but it doesn't, for me, have the same kind of visceral impact that the original from '97 did. So, have you seen both? I think we did the remake. I know we did one of Funny Games.
Yeah, we did the remake for the show, and you know what? It's my number 2 actually. Peter and Paul from Funny Games. I think this is kind of the flip side of Heavenly Creatures. This is the what evil lurks in the hearts of the modern young teenage boy. And I think it's just what's really struck me about this film is, I mean, it's just like you said, it's just sadism for sadism's sake. I mean, it is just relentlessly cruel and, just such a brutal film. And even the parts where, you think that they get their comeuppance, he snatches it away from you with and just like this really strange way of doing it. It's just bizarre. But it's totally Haneke, just the way he does it. And it's just such a bleak film and tough watch, but it's something you got to watch. I think just if you want to get into that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think what did we watch? Did we watch The White Ribbon first? I can't remember. I remember really liking that film too.
Yeah. And the remake is, and to your point, it's good, but it's completely unnecessary. It is literally a shot-for-shot remake of the original, basically. Down to everything about it is exactly the same, just in English with different actors, and that is it. I mean, it's a very, very, again, weird choice on Haneke's part to do it, but you know what? You got to respect the guy. The guy's a madman.
Definitely. I think then I'm wondering if my number 2 is your number 1, and if I'm probably being honest with myself on quality of film, this probably should be my number 1. My number 1, though, is a sentimental favorite for me. Okay. So my number 2 is Holly and Kit from Badlands. Terrence Malick's debut feature.
Okay.
Is just a stunningly gorgeous and insane film. The whole thing, well, I think it's been said to death with Malick, is that his films are basically just moving postcards, just these beautiful shots. How he frames and shoots these things, it's just, they're works of art, every one of them. And this was his debut from 1973. Martin Sheen is Kit, Sissy Spacek is Holly. And basically she falls in love with him. I think she's 15, and he's a little older, in his 20s. He's 25. He's a troubled greaser, as it says on the Wikipedia page, that resembles James Dean, and Holly slowly falls in love with him, and he's crazy. And they're killing their way through the countryside, and the police are hunting them down. But it is just a dark, picturesque drama. And it's an absolutely stunning, possibly one of the greatest debuts from a director of all time. If you haven't seen Badlands, rent it, buy it today. You will not be disappointed.
Interesting. It's not my number 1, basically, because I forgot about it, but I'm not going to remove my number 1 from the list. Okay. Just because. So I was actually getting ready to go out and casually catch Thoroughbreds this morning. And I had the TV on, and on in the background that came on, which I thought was Kismet, so I decided to put it as my number 1, was The Professional, with Jean Reno and a very, very young Natalie Portman in her first role. Basically, it is the story of a kind of childlike hitman, and Jean Reno, who takes in a young orphan played by Natalie Portman, whose family is murdered by crooked cops, led by a fantastic chewing the scenery Gary Oldman, and this is the definition of chewing the scenery throughout that entire film with Gary Oldman. Directed by Luc Besson. Really before Luc Besson really gave into his insane tendencies with the rest of his film oeuvre, but this is kind of just a good, solid action film, and it just kind of, you watch the two of them, Renault and Portman kind of play off each other, these two kind of childlike, killers, essentially, kind of getting their comeuppance. It's a good, fantastic little film. It's really something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, honorable mention for me. Didn't quite make the cut, though it's still a great one. So my number 1 then is a sentimental favorite. It's a film I will watch. I just get in a weird mood where I'll watch it like 4 or 5 times in a week. every like once a year. It happens every year. I don't know what it is, and it's Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. You have Brandon and Philip. It's basically based on the Leopold and Loeb case about the two friends who felt that they were upper parts of society, so regular rules and laws didn't apply to them. So if they have an underclassman or a lower class person, they should be able to kill them without any consequence. Jimmy Stewart stars as the teacher. So what they do is they kill their classmate, put him in a trunk, and then serve dinner on his grave. And they invite the deceased kid's family, his fiance, and then their old schoolmaster who taught them this philosophy, who's played by Jimmy Stewart. And Stewart knows something's up, but he's not quite sure what. And as the film progresses, he kind of figures out what's happening. It's also famous because they supposedly only cut, I think, 3 or 4 times throughout the entire film. So it's fascinating to watch that way. And the whole film basically takes place in this apartment. I adore Rope. Back when I used to work with Frank Ale, the Arts Quest in Pennsylvania when I was still in Bethlehem. We had a Hitchcock marathon, and I lobbied hard for Rope to be included, but the manager absolutely hates Rope, and he would make fun of me every time, but I would bring it up every time as well. I have such an affection for it. So it had to be my number one. Honorable mentions, Matt. What did you have that didn't make the cut?
The only thing I could think of off the top of my head was I mentioned it earlier. Bound, definitely the definition of femme fatale with Corky and Violet and Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly.
Joey Pants.
Joey Pants. Yeah. So I mean, it's a good. I mean, very neotypical neo-noir femme fatales, but it's a good solid little film.
No, that's a good one. That's the first film for the Wachowskis too, right? Isn't it their first movie?
I don't know. Did they direct it? I know they wrote it. I don't know if they directed it though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had Natural Born Killers. I actually threw Last House on the Left on here. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Leatherface family. That's a pretty good team. You said Strangers on a Train. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Henry and Otis. Children of the Damned. Those damned kids.
Yeah.
Goodfellas. Jimmy the Gent Conway, Henry Hill, and Tommy DeVito. I went on a little Scorsese bender a couple weeks ago, and I watched Goodfellas and Casino back to back. True Romance, Clarence in Alabama. I'm surprised that didn't make anything for you. Pulp Fiction, Vincent and James, and I had Heavenly Creatures as well. And then, of course, just for the heck of it, I threw in Motel Hell, Vincent and Ida Smith. Don't eat the sausages, kids. Do not eat the sausages.
Mm-hmm.
Another great, horrible 80s horror film. All right. Good times, Matt. Just an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Who's your favorite Murderous team up? We'd love to hear all about it. Matt, what's coming up next week on the big show? I think it's going to be a little Tomb Raider. Do they finally break the movie video game curse?
I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see about that. And then we'd probably be checking out Killing Gunther. As we all know, any longtime listeners of the show know of my affection for Arnold. And we're finally going to catch up with the latest Arnold Schwarzenegger action film written and directed by Taron Killam, formerly of Saturday Night Live. So we'll be talking about that and lots of other fun stuff. Also, I will be reporting and tweeting live from the Gasparilla Film Festival starting here Tuesday, March 20th, which I'm very, very excited about. So follow us on Twitter. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Just do a search for The First Run. Scroll, 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 scroll. Eventually you will find us. And that's going to be the big show for this week, Matt. We're going to take an extended break, and we will see you all soon.
Yeah.
We happy? Vincent, we happy?
Yeah, we happy.